CEO Ronald Hickler from Create the Difference. I wanted to talk a little bit about the USBC national tournament ineligible bowling balls, and kind of really what the whole urethane thing kind of really means. So I actually have the report in front of me. I want to touch on some of the points that you may not have noticed or missed maybe if you didn't read the whole report. I've read the report several times at this point and just kind of want to give you some thoughts. First off, if you're watching this video and you're just a regular league bowler, I'm a regular league bowler. I bowl a few tournaments, but if you're a regular league bowler, the main thing is these rule changes don't impact you at all for right now. The urethane bowling balls have not been revoked. They can still be used in USBC certified competition. Really what's being changed here is when some of the highest levels of the game, these bowling balls can be used, okay? So like if you just bowl a league and you like a purple hammer, then you can keep throwing purple hammer. But if you're a highly competitive bowler, and let's say you're gonna go bowl the Masters, the US Open, something like that, now you gotta pay attention to what the rules really were saying here, because there have been some changes that are made here. Some of the things that I think are really important to note also is like, at the end of the day, the bowling ball companies will adapt. I think when you make a rule change, any sort of rule change, it kind of levels the playing field, so to speak. So arguably one could say that Brunswick brands, Hammer specifically, had a competitive advantage with Purple Hammer, and now that's been taken away from them. So if I was them, I would probably feel a little slighted by the change. But at the same token, those guys over there are smart, right? They're gonna be able to figure out some things to be able to navigate the new landscape, so to speak. They've already got some bowling balls that they've done that are different. That torpedo direct hit ball is different. That new hammer ball, the NU ball, was different. So they've already got some bowling balls that were different. And I feel like they'll just continue to go down that path. The other competitors, Motive and Storm, if I was them, maybe I'd be a little more excited now because, again, the Purple Hammer, which is kind of the ball that everybody knows, has now been taken out of play effectively at this super high level. And then they can begin to work on some additional things too, to get themselves to have that smooth, controllable performance that urethane really gives you. And that's really the thing here, right? Like the urethane bowling ball, what it does is it gives you a more controllable reaction. That's very useful on tough patterns. It's very useful for extremely high rev rates. It's very useful for extremely competitive environments. And that's kind of why you see it used a lot in those areas. Part of the negative to that is that you've seen that trickle down to league bowlers too, that really don't understand its real true purpose or intent, and or don't need it. Like they just don't need it. They could use a reactive ball and be just fine. So there's a little bit of miseducation or a need for education in terms of when to use those tools like urethane that probably needs to be explored a little bit more as well. But you say, okay, well, hey, I am one of those guys that's gonna bowl these competitive events, and I am gonna, be out there, I'm gonna, be impacted by these rule changes. So what would you do? Like, what would I do? So a couple of things, right? First, try to understand a little bit more about the urethane balls that were impacted. What did they do? One of the big things that those bowling balls did is they did not flare. If you go look, Pitch Black's Purple Hammers, those balls all have low differential readings. And because of that, they don't flare a whole lot. That's one of the reasons those balls are controllable. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons those balls are controllable. If you remember, there actually was a Black Widow urethane bowling ball that came out, and it was not popular and it was not overly successful, but it flared a lot. And I feel like that's part of the problem with the bowling balls that are urethane, trying to create that shape. When you try to create a urethane ball but give it a lot of flare, it doesn't tend to match up nearly as well and can create some other issues in terms of being able to give you a consistent reaction and performance. Whereas the low differential ball that doesn't flare is going to be smooth, going to be consistent, yada, 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 yada. So what I would do is I would first begin to go look for core shapes that have low differential, that are reactive. The other thing you can do is begin to use layout to help cut down the differential. As you begin to put the pin closer to your axis, the flare potential and differential begins to get smaller and smaller. If you were to put the pin on your axis point, that differential will be as low as it possibly could be. If you were to throw the ball down the lane, you'd watch that pin on your axis not even move and kind of migrate with your bowling ball as it went down the lane, but you wouldn't have any flare, which would then create a ball that's very, very smooth, very, very controllable, like these urethane balls. Now, that's not the only thing, right? One of the other things that most people don't probably know is that urethane has the ability to hold the surface much longer than a reactive ball. That's a big thing that we know because we obviously with the True Cut sanding pads, we do a lot of surface testing, and we've done a lot of studies where we've taken bowling balls at like say 500 grit and then seen how long it takes for those balls to change as they're being used. Reactive balls are very quickly, 2, 3, 4 games. They can get up to what we call stable, which is 4,700 grit, whereas a urethane ball may take 15, 20, 30 games, maybe even more to get to stable for that to happen. So what I would do in that case, if I'm this competitive bowler going to be impacted by these rules, I'm going to go and get multiple of the same ball and then use surface on those bowling balls to be able to allow me to use those bowling balls longer. Because like I said, the surface will change fairly quickly. So if you know that, and you've got 2 or 3 of the same ball laid out the exact same way with the same surface, you can't change surface while you're bowling, but you can change bowling balls. So you could actually have a bowling ball that is, say, 1,000 grit, and then as you're bowling with it and you begin to notice that it's going longer because the surface is changing, you can switch back to another bowling ball that's 1,000 grit and keep that surface integrity longer. So that's another trick that you could do to be able to keep you competitive and give you those reactions. The other thing to keep in mind is the urethane balls typically are very dull. The reason why they're dull is because they typically will hook early and then they'll be very smooth after that. And in order for you to keep that reaction, you're gonna have to use sanding pads to keep your bowling ball dull. And doing that, that's gonna allow you to keep that earlier smooth shape. So I'm gonna go with low differential balls. I'm gonna go with some more surface on my bowling balls maybe than normal, and I'm gonna have multiple bowling balls. Another thing that kind of gets asked is what about asymmetrical balls versus symmetrical balls? Typically, what I would recommend is that people use symmetrical bowling balls and then use the low differential or low differential layouts to be able to give you that smoother reaction. When you use an asymmetrical ball with, say, a pin close to the axis point, you do get an earlier reaction, but then in the back end of the lane, the ball tends to roll forward. You really don't want your ball to roll forward per se. You just want the bowling ball not to overhook. So I feel like the asymmetrical balls, though they do have a place in terms of creating a more controllable shape, I feel like the symmetrical ball that is continuous, lower, earlier hooking becomes a more usable piece over the long haul, especially when you're bowling tournament environments that are really difficult. And that, again, emulates more like this Purple Hammer would. Some other little tricks that I would tell you, obviously we have a product that you can use, True Cut Gloss. It's gonna help to reduce oil absorption on your bowling ball as well. And then I would just really start to practice with a urethane ball and some of these reactive balls that I've now tried to get to emulate more like a urethane ball, right? Because that's the key, right? Ultimately, you want that type of shape. And the only real way you're gonna know is to get out there and bowl with it a little bit, especially understanding that that surface is gonna change on the reactive ball a whole lot faster. So really getting out there and bowling and finding how long it takes before you begin to see that reaction to change will really impact your decision making when it comes to what bowling balls you should bring with you to these events that now have exclusions. I don't necessarily know why USBC decided to make some tournaments you can use it part of it, sometimes you can't use it. I don't fully know why they did that. I have my own suspicions, and that's their job to make those decisions. So we'll leave that be what it is. At the end of the day, they get to make the rules. It's their playground, their sandbox. We're playing in it, so we just need to adjust and continue to move forward. That's the best thing that we can do. And I feel like sometimes we get a little caught up in the weeds a little bit, thinking that these things are all, we're trying to do things that are counterproductive or counterintuitive. And at the end of the day, I think that what they feel is that this is in the best interest given the circumstance that they've got. They could have just did an outright ban, to be honest with you, and nobody could have said anything really about it. They didn't do that. So we should probably be a little bit more just kind of thoughtful on some of the things that we do and we say. And like I said, I think, with some of the other changes that are happening in the sport, I feel like this is one that's going to affect a smaller group of people, and we're all going to get to watch the impact of that. So we'll get to see how these rule changes impact the upper echelon of the sport, and we'll see how they adapt. The best part of the upper echelon of the sport is that the reason why they're there is because they know how to adjust. So ultimately, they're going to be able to figure it out and make it work anyway. So I'm kind of excited to kind of see how this plays out for the next year. Anyway, I just wanted to jump on real quick, give you some tips, some thoughts, and maybe drop us a comment in the comments here if you guys want to continue the discussion. I feel like it's an interesting time. It's going to be challenging, but at the same token, it's going to be fun to kind of watch and see kind of what happens with some of these things that have transpired in the last week. With that being said, I'm out of here. CEO Ronald Hicklin. Talk to you soon.